joining us.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. My pleasure. I'm glad we've managed to go live after the bit of worry with the tech.
Yeah, quarter of an hour of tech issues. You have to be resilient, actually, at this time to do like really small things can be really annoying, hey?
Yeah, but you know what? I think the only good thing about it is everyone's being a little bit. I feel like everyone's being a little bit more lenient with that stuff because we all know that we're doing
Yeah,
stuff that we're not used to. So
yeah,
I don't feel as pressured when the tech fails as I probably usually would because I just
yeah,
think we all know that we're in these sort of times, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, Josh, you're a resilience coach
Yeah.
and you work a lot with corporations and organizations, helping the members of those organizations to deal with everyday challenges.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So I work with lots of different organisations. I work with corporate organisations, but I also work with like fire services and police services, and then I do also work with children as well. So I work with young people right down to the age of 5 and 6 years old,
okay.
delivering workshops of different kinds. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And did I did I imagine this, or are you doing a workshop for teachers this week?
Next week I am
This
doing
week.
a Next week I'm doing a webcast for free webcast for teachers. Yeah, so I do these normally. I do a lot of these in person, so I go and
Yeah.
deliver to teachers. That is a lot more experience based and trying to help people to better understand why young people may display some of the more challenging behaviors that they display. And I think when we start to understand the whys behind a lot of that, it can help uh, anyone working with young people to feel more equipped in their job. It's
Yeah.
less about telling them how to do their job because I think they're the best people to know in the situation, and
Yeah.
more just about helping to equip them with a better understanding so that they can do that better. Yeah.
Yeah. So for myself down in lockdown, I've been trying to get a better understanding of myself and the challenges that I have faced,
Mm-hmm.
which is why I started these live conversations because I thought I can't possibly be the only person facing these challenges.
Mm. And I think a lot of people are facing them, and because we're in times that none of us truly understand, right?
Yeah.
There's nobody really uh, that's an expert at living through a pandemic like this because it's completely new, right?
Yeah.
And so there's so much different kind of conflicting emotions and conflicting feelings and conflicting views of how you should be dealing with this to get through it.
Yeah. Yes.
Some like and some of it can be quite damaging. Even the stuff that tries to, and I think I did this originally. I tried to kind of make it like this big sort of spiritual journey of waking the planet up, and I think there's a lot to be said for that. But I also think there's the flip side of that is that lots of people are dying, and it's kind of worrying times. So in that
Yeah.
sense, it's not this, you know, I don't want to. We shouldn't get too caught up in making it something that it's not. Right? It's a
Yeah.
difficult time, and I think
Yeah.
the more we accept that, then the easier we can be on ourselves.
Yeah. And like at first I was like, yeah, I'm going to use my time really well. I'm going to really enjoy my time off. And I remember you posting this meme about basically about toxic positivity.
Yeah, I
So
remember it. Yeah,
yeah, so
yeah.
you posted it. Do you remember what it said?
Um, it said I'll paraphrase it because I can't remember exactly what I wrote, but it was something like, "Be careful with positivity. Positivity is a good thing. It's very, very useful, but don't get drunk on positivity. Uh,
Yes, that
don't
was it.
don't allow yourself to just think that positive is the only emotion I'm going to allow myself to feel,
Yeah,
because if you get drunk on it in that way, you'll have a hangover. Eventually, you'll have
yeah,
a hangover.
yeah.
Um,
So
yeah,
I disagreed with that. So I wrote underneath, no, I think positivity is really getting me through, and I'll be as positive as I like. I wrote in the comments.
Yeah.
And then a week later, I just crashed emotionally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like spectacular emotional crash. Like literally on my bed, feeling like the walls were closing in.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I am not accustomed to feeling like that. And it really shook me, you know, it
Yeah.
really shook me. And that's why I've started these conversations, because partly because I want to understand myself why this time's so difficult at times, although most of each day now I enjoy, but
Hmm.
I do have times where I feel quite lost, and you know, I'll be fine. I'll be going around doing stuff, and then I'll sit down and a thought will come into my head. I can't do another day like this.
Yeah. So do you think, you spoke there about there's times where you feel lost.
Yeah,
Do you think that's bad or wrong that you feel that?
yeah, I do.
You think it's bad or
I
wrong?
think I like should be able to like be productive all the time, feel okay all the time.
Mm.
Yeah,
What?
that's a really good point. I do
Yeah.
feel that it's a bad thing.
Right. But we're in a pandemic. There's a
Yeah,
virus out there that is killing people, a lot of people. We're on lockdown. We're in an environment. We're having to live in an environment that's very unnatural for us as human
yeah,
beings. There's a
yeah,
distinct lack of connection. A lot of the
yeah.
things that we crave and need as human beings. So my opinion is you should feel lost sometimes. And
Okay.
and if you didn't, then I think it would be not a worry. I think some people are may be able to manage in these situations and feel better in it. But I don't think it's bad or wrong that you feel lost. I think I
Okay.
think I think you should feel lost
Yeah.
because this isn't like uh, this isn't a positive time.
No.
This is a difficult time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I read a quote recently. I think it was a meme from somebody that said, "A lot of us think that we're working from home when actually we're not working from home. We're trying to survive a crisis while working at home, and
Yeah.
it's a lot different." And
Yeah.
so I think one of the biggest problems that a lot of us face is that when we feel difficult emotions,
Yeah.
like feeling lost or feeling
Yeah.
low or feeling down,
Yeah.
we follow that by shaming ourselves,
Yeah.
and th-
Absolutely.
and that's when the shoulds come out that you spoke about.
Yeah.
I should be feeling better than this,
Yeah.
when actually you shouldn't.
Yeah.
You should be feeling all of these difficult emotions because we're in a difficult time.
Yeah. But then if I allow myself to feel lost, then I feel angry about the situation and I don't know what to do with the anger. What do I do with the anger? I feel angry at God, angry at the universe,
Why do you feel angry at them?
because everything's closed. I can't go out for coffee. I can't go to my aerial class. I can't meet my friends. I'm on my own all day.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
and then when you feel angry about that, how long do you feel angry about it for?
not very long, actually.
And so
Not very long.
if when you tell yourself that you shouldn't feel angry about it and that I'm all right, you do what you spoke about, where you have this, no, I'm positive, I'm okay, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, and then eventually we reach our breaking point and we
Yeah.
fall into a week's worth of anger and feeling lost and all of that because we've ran away from
Yeah.
it, when actually each day we the way that I try to be is
Yeah.
in the moments when I feel lost and angry,
Yeah.
rather than being I feel lost and angry, and this is stupid, and right, and I shouldn't feel like this, and I'm annoyed at myself now. I've got myself in this place. It's much better if I can be like, okay, right now I feel lost. How do you feel
Yeah.
today, Josh? Right, today I feel lost, and I feel pissed off that I can't go out and see my family. And,
Yeah.
and there's nothing wrong with that
Yeah.
at all,
Yeah.
at all. If
Yeah.
my life was great and everything was going swimmingly, and I was getting angry and feeling resentful, then possibly there's some work I need to do on myself.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
if my emotions of anger, being lost, frightened, fear, whatever it might be, these difficult emotions, if actually when I trace them back they're justified, then they're just
Yeah.
justified. So they're just normal human feelings.
Yeah.
It's the shame that we feel around them that causes us a problem.
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the shame stops us from allowing ourselves to feel them and then we bury them, and then eventually we're going to have to feel them, and they're going to be compounded.
Exactly. And if we don't find a way to feel and process our feelings and emotions, our body will find a way to do it for us. So,
Yeah,
and like for me in my life, I experienced depression. Depression for me was the result of depressed emotions. I had pressed
mhm,
down my emotions because I didn't want to feel them, and so my
yeah,
body created signals and way of expressing that, and that came out of me in things like addiction. And
yeah,
for me, that was very much a reaction to not being able to deal and process and feel my emotions.
yeah,
And then when we take, for me, when I took addiction away, and now I don't have a substance to escape the ways that I feel,
yeah,
I start to use behaviors like,
yes,
for example, positivity,
yeah,
where I say I'm all right, I'm fine, I'm brilliant, everything's great, da, da, da. And it's exactly the same thing. It's a mask and it's a facade to hide the ways that I truly feel, right?
yeah,
So what I really want to be is as authentic as I can. So where I'm in a place where I feel a range of emotions and I don't shame myself for feeling them. Actually, I just
yeah.
I allow myself to feel and express them in a healthy way.
And when you talk about authenticity, you're talking about me being authentic to myself, not authentic to the world. It's like authenticity is about me honoring who I really am
Yeah. So
and allowing myself to be that.
exactly. So there's a guy called, anyone that's heard of him, if you haven't, you should check him out. It's a guy called Dr. Gabor Mate.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah. Now he will express that authenticity in its most simplest form is understanding what I'm feeling, understanding what I need as a result of what I'm feeling, and then being able to communicate that within my activities and my relationships. So
Hmm.
if we take the feeling, I'll use it again, the one that you said of lost, because I think it's one that
Yeah,
people can relate to.
yeah,
If I'm feeling lost,
yeah,
I need to then work out what I need as a result of that. And if it's that I feel lost because there's maybe an absence of connection, then I
yeah,
need to be able to communicate that I feel a loss of connection. But we find it very difficult to be able to communicate exactly what we're feeling to the people around us. And there's
yeah,
lots of different reasons for that. There's lots of different conditionings that have happened to us throughout our lives that may have pushed us to that point. Like a simplistic version of an example would be, I believe that if as a child
yeah,
we had our parents were we sensed that our parents were emotionally full when we were young.
yeah,
We may have felt like if we expressed any of our difficult emotions, it would be a burden on them.
yeah,
So what we do as children in that situation is we learn to completely detach from our own feelings, but
yeah,
become hypersensitive to the people around us feelings. So we
yeah,
become very good at knowing what our mum and dad want us to be, and very
yeah,
good at hiding from what we really are and becoming what they want us to be.
yeah,
This means we then grow up to be adults that are really good and caring, that everybody thinks is amazing because you're always
yeah,
able to help people and you always seem to sense and know how I feel, but we're
yeah,
completely numb and shut off from our own feelings
yeah,
because that's the coping mechanism we developed when we were younger.
yeah,
And you'll see that playing out. That certainly played out for me in these times. For
yeah,
me, during a pandemic like what we're experiencing at the moment, I'm very good at being like, right, what can I be for everybody else to make everybody else feel better? And
yeah,
it's always at the expense of myself. It's me that gets left
yeah,
feeling all these emotions that I don't know how to express.
yeah. It's like we squeeze ourselves into a corner.
Yeah,
Ah,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
because we feel like our feelings are a burden.
yeah, yeah. And I've also had the feeling, I've also experienced during this time this not being able to feel anything. I can't feel anything. I
Mm.
just want to feel something. You know, in that film Train Spotting, when he's running up the hill
Yeah,
at
yeah.
the beginning and he's like, I still can't feel anything.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Again, so I think this is quite linked to what we were just speaking about, which is a detachment from our feelings. It's a coping mechanism that we may have developed at some stage in our lives when we
yeah,
felt overwhelmed by our feelings and emotions.
yeah,
and so our brain developed a way to deal with that.
Yeah.
A good way of describing it for people to understand is, if you think of it in terms of like tuning out. So if you've ever
Yeah.
been in a boring conversation with somebody when they're really boring you, yeah, and
Yeah.
you can't go anywhere because you've got to listen to them, and then at the end they ask you a question and you think, oh, I haven't been listening.
Yeah.
That's because your brain's gone, right, this is boring, we can't go anywhere, let's just
Yeah.
make this more manageable for you, and they tune you out, and so you tune
Yeah.
out. So we've all experienced that.
Yeah.
uh, but some of us have learned to be able, you know, some of our brains and our bodies have learned to do that whenever we're overwhelmed. And
Yeah.
I've found in my life, I don't remember the birth of my children, for example, because when it was happening, my brain went, cool, this is overwhelming. Boop. It
Yes.
allowed me to be there, but tuned me out from my feelings as a way of
Yeah.
coping, which means
Yeah.
that I don't experience it. So I don't
Yeah.
remember it.
Yeah. And I remember when my kids were young, they used to call it Claire's World, and they used to find it really frustrating.
Yeah.
And they used to be like, "Hello, is there anyone there?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, and as they've grown older, they're adults now. I've learned to bring myself back and be present,
Yeah.
but it can be like a massive effort to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
present.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I have to work really hard to be present. Yeah,
yeah,
and that's why my short term memory is not very good.
yeah,
It's often not that I don't remember it. It's that when it happened, I didn't experience it because I
yeah,
wasn't present. I was thinking of a million. And my wife, bless her, gets so frustrated sometimes because she'll be like, "We had a conversation about this last week," and
yeah,
it's not that I wasn't interested. It's just that at that moment in time, my mind was so busy that I was
yeah,
unable to be present and listen and take any of it
yeah,
in.
yeah. And I try and explain that to my adult kids. Like, it's not that I'm not interested. It's just that, and I was there, but it's just that it didn't go in. Yeah,
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 yeah. And I've really had to communicate that, like, definitely to my wife, for example, when,
yeah,
you know, because obviously she naturally, like your children did, started to get a little bit like, well, why don't you want to be here? What's wrong? What's
yeah,
wrong with us? Why can't you
yeah,
be present? Why is it so hard to just enjoy this moment with us?
yeah,
And, you know, to really explain that it's not to do with it's not to, whenever I'm struggling in the present moment,
yeah,
it has nothing to do with the present moment and much more
yeah,
to do with a response that I've learned and gained in the past.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, brilliant.
And we're seeing that. I think we're seeing a lot of the way that people are responding in the current situation has a lot less to do with the current situation and a lot more to do with responses that we've learned in the past. So
Yeah,
you have some people who are overly anxious about it. They may have
yeah,
possibly grown up in an environment where they were taught consciously and subconsciously to get an anxious response quickly.
yeah,
Anxiety comes around to try and protect us, to make us alert. And so, if
yeah,
somebody seems to get anxious really easily, they probably lived a life when they were younger where they had to get alert quickly to every kind of
yeah,
thing. So, we're seeing that play out for some people.
yeah,
I think for me, I've become a little bit of, I've always felt as a child that I was worried about how everybody else was thinking, like
yeah,
thinking and feeling. So my response
yeah,
has been to kick into gear and help everybody and be
yeah,
that spearhead at the front who sorts it all out.
yeah,
Some people withdraw. We see some people that have withdrawn to it.
yeah,
So, you know, and I think a lot of these, some of it has to do with our natural character, but I think a lot of it has to
yeah,
do with how that natural character integrated in into life when we were young and our
yeah,
brains were developing at the fastest rate.
yeah. And without being over analytical, but possibly I am, there's then there's there seem to be certain responses. So um, as I've mentioned before, my only window onto the world at the moment is social media. I don't have a TV. I'm not listening to the radio. I'm only listening to music. So that's probably not a healthy thing. Um, so then I struggle with other people's responses. So a lot of people's responses is like, these idiots who keep going out. And because I feel really anxious about going out, and because I'm by myself all the time, and I'm really anxious about doing the right thing, then I get really irritable with their response about generalizing about other people because it makes me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah,
And then it just creates conflict with people who actually really like.
yeah, yeah. And there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that going on at the moment because a lot of us are experiencing emotions. And what you've done really well there is that, like, you've spoken about the kind of recognition that your frustration with it comes a lot from your own anxieties of
Yeah.
going out. Yeah,
Well, I had to
and
look at it because I started swearing at people on Facebook actually at one point.
yeah,
And then I thought, well, I'm not usually like this. So what's going on? Like, why do I care? What matters so much here? Why do I care so much? Why does it? But it still bothers me. But I don't outwardly react now.
yeah. But there's also a lot of judgment as well floating about. I've really, I mean, I'll put it out there. I've really disliked the judgment of. I hate it when people take pictures of people in fields and say,
So do
why
I.
are you doing why are you here?
So
my
do
my
I.
my, my personal opinion is, uh if you live in a flat and you haven't got a garden, I think you should be allowed in a field, right?
Yeah.
Personally, to sit in a field. I think if we lived in the perfect society, we would say, if you've got a back garden, you can go out for one daily exercise. If you haven't got a back garden, you can also have an hour where you go and sit in a field, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you know, people say that this pandemic or that mental health doesn't discriminate. Well, this pandemic, let me tell you, absolutely does discriminate,
Yeah.
right? Because if you're living in a flat with no garden, it's harder to
Which
live through this
I am.
pandemic, which you are, right? So
Yeah.
it's harder for you to live through this pandemic than it is for me to live through this pandemic.
Yeah.
Because last week and like today and yesterday when it's been really hot, you could ask me how was yesterday for you. I say it was brilliant. I was sunbathing in the back garden.
Yeah.
You don't have that pleasure, right? So,
Yeah.
and then I've been meaning to create a meme actually about some of the pictures of people sat in fields because I
Yeah.
wanted to do a thing where you have the field, right, and you might have a woman sat here, right, and everyone puts it, and then they sort of like stay at home, save the NHS or whatever. I wanted to like have an arrow pointing to the woman sat on the bench and just have key worker off the back of her sixth 12-hour shift in a row, lives in a
Exactly.
lives in a flat with no garden, right?
Yeah.
One hour of peace in nature, yeah.
Yeah.
Then the man sat over here on the field, husband of a key worker, lives in a flat with one child, yeah, has been looking
Yeah.
after the child for 12 hours a day, 7 days in a row. He's got out of the house. He doesn't want to walk. He just wants to sit in nature for an hour. And when you
Exactly.
start to look at it in that sense, you start to think, hang on a minute, we shouldn't be judging these people.
Yeah.
Of course, there is an issue, and I guess the problem in our society is that if you said everyone that lives in a flat without a garden can spend some time in the field, everyone would go and spend time in the field and say that they lived in a flat, right?
Yeah.
Or not everyone, because I wouldn't. But
Yeah.
that's why I get a lot less uh, judgmental about it. But I'm also aware that I just push my difficult emotions and anger and frustrations towards somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
So I've probably overly done it towards, I've gone overly political, right? That's my
Yeah.
way of
Yeah.
releasing my anger and my
Yeah.
frustration.
Yeah.
So I know that we're kind of all doing it to some degree.
And it's made me aware. So we've got a shared garden here, but for the first 3 weeks, I wouldn't use the shared garden because I didn't feel it was fair on everyone else.
Yeah. And that would be exactly the same as me. If I lived in a
Yeah.
flat with a shared garden, I would be paranoid and anxious, and I would have anxiety about sitting in the shared garden because I'd
Yeah.
be thinking everyone thinks Josh is out there again. Yeah,
Yeah. I think she's so special. She can sit in the garden.
yeah,
So, so it's taken me 4 weeks, and eventually I worked out. Okay, there's a whole square of houses overlooking the garden. Our house is 6 flats. 4 of us, out of everyone who lives here, don't have our own garden. The other three are working anyway.
yeah,
Like I had to like do some sort of mathematical calculation to
mm,
allow myself to take a blanket and sit in the garden yesterday.
yeah, yeah. And
And
that's
I
obviously
so
perpetuated. That's perpetuated by the judgment that we see online.
totally.
You go online and see everybody judging everyone else. I found myself, if I've had to pop out for bread and milk, like I found myself coming back in the car and wanting to like hold the bread and milk up as I walk into my
Yeah.
house to let the street know
Okay.
I know I've
Yeah.
gone out for a second time, but we needed bread and milk.
Yeah.
And you know, there's some of that insecurity comes from inside of me, but some of that insecurity comes because of the way that we act as a society and the way that with this call out culture that we live in, you know?
Yes. And for me, I really think that the call out culture for me is a real concern.
Mm.
And I think that it is potentially as toxic as the virus.
Oh, absolutely. And the problem with call out culture is that it survives long after the virus and it's been around for long
Exactly.
before the virus. Yeah. Um,
Exactly.
and what, you know, what I say to people, because I've had a couple of times in my, you know, as I've become sort of more visual online, let's say, I've had a couple of times where I've felt like people are trying to cancel me, right? They're doing
Yeah.
the call out culture. And it's
Yeah.
like I say to everybody, like, let me tell you, if you believe that as a human being, if I make a mistake or I do something that you don't like, that I should be cancelled, then
Yes.
you're better off cancelling me now because I'm hugely flawed. I make loads of mistakes
Yeah.
and I do things that I wouldn't want to stand up and in front of people and try and justify doing, right? Because
Yeah.
I act erratically when I feel under pressure and things like that.
Yeah.
So you know, we are all humans. We all make silly mistakes, right? We all
Yeah.
make mistakes that we don't learn from, and then we do them again, right? And I
Yeah.
think we've got to be so much more forgiving of one another in that sense, because
Yeah.
otherwise we'll just cancel each other completely because we've all
Yeah.
got our demons, you know.
Yes. And what I've noticed about the call out culture and the culture of fear around, so there's the culture of fear around contracting the virus,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's the culture of fear around the call out culture.
Mm.
So, so, so when I go out, you know, I personally don't have a lot of fear about catching the virus personally because I've
Mm-hmm.
processed that. But my fear is the call out culture. So that when I go out, I'm quite jumpy. So I'm so in fear myself about doing the right thing that I will do the wrong thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I will miss that arrow in the supermarket. Or if I'm shopping for someone else, I'll completely forget that they asked for bread because you have to follow the arrows round and I've gone past the bread. Or I will, in town on Saturday, I actually walked, somebody felt too close to them
Mm.
and they made a sarcastic remark. They were waiting in a queue for a small shop, so they were waiting on the pavement.
Mm.
And I walked on the pavement because there was traffic. Um, and they made a sarcastic remark. And I turned around and I did check that they had legs first. And then I said, "You've got legs, haven't you? You could move." But the thing is, that is not my normal Saturday behaviour in town.
No, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like everything's just so cranked up.
yeah. Everyone's emotionally full, aren't they? Everyone appears
Yeah,
emotionally full, so the small things are setting us off, you know.
yeah,
The small things are sort of triggering those responses in us, and
yeah,
that's why we got to like be much better at forgiving each other because you
yeah,
know that person didn't know you on that time, right? But
yeah.
if that's the only interaction that you had with them, if they're not thinking fully about it, they might just think that you're not a very nice person, right? But that's just not
Absolutely.
that's just not the case, right? We're
Yeah,
just because of the times that we're living in. We're all stressed. We all feel a little bit unhinged to a degree and in some
yeah,
way. So we've got to be, you know, we've got to have a lot more compassion for each other.
yeah,
I think,
yeah,
you know, and I say that as somebody who needs people to have it for me because of
yeah,
the times we're in. You know,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I felt really fortunate that later on I was in town and somebody stopped to speak to me at a good 2 meters distance, and that person walked past with his wife, and I thought, at least you can see that I'm not an all-out nutter now.
yeah,
At least you can see that I can actually stop and talk to people.
yeah. But even then, see, everybody at the moment, if you like, you just told the story then of you stopped and spoke to someone. Have you noticed how we all feel like we've got to just clarify that it was 2 meters apart, right? Because we're like worried. If I say I spoke to someone, you might think I was stood near them and broke the social distancing rules, right?
Yeah,
but that comes from our place of anxiety again, right?
Yeah,
Because we know we're
absolutely.
worried and other people are worried, and uncertain times create uncertainty, right? And I suppose that's
Yeah,
natural. That's why we can't be hard on ourselves, because
yeah,
it's difficult times at the moment.
yeah, yeah. And also that, so I went for a walk to the Heavens last week
Hmm.
and took a picnic blanket and was sat down and I saw these dog walkers. And in my head, I was thinking, those dog walkers are spying on me. Paranoid,
Yeah,
paranoid.
yeah,
Then, but then I saw an article on online for the local newspaper, and there were all these dog walkers saying, "Well, I was in the Heavens on Thursday, and I saw people sitting down, and I was thinking, well, I was right. Actually, they were."
yeah. Yeah, look, again, that's just another reflection of what crazy times that we live in.
Yeah,
And by the way, when you actually look at the full government guidelines, you are allowed to sit down for a rest. You know
yeah,
that. And,
yeah,
and another guideline that I saw recently, that is an official government guideline, is you are allowed to drive to somewhere that you want to go for a walk, as long
yeah.
as the drive is shorter than the walk.
Yes, I saw
Right?
that.
Yeah. So,
I
and
saw
I
that
was,
clarification last weekend.
yeah. It was on
Weekend.
all the major news subjects. So it wasn't
Yeah,
fake news. This was real news, and
yeah.
I was surprised by that, because I'd seen a lot of people taking pictures of cars next to walking spots, saying, I saw, just
Look
people,
at these
yeah,
idiots.
look at these idiots. When actually, the regulations say you're allowed to do that, right?
Yeah,
And and I've done it. We go for walks around the lake near where we live, and there's benches around it, and we go with the kids. And halfway around the lake, we stop and sit on the bench, right?
yeah,
We stop and sit on the bench because the kids need a rest. They need to get
yeah.
some juice and have a refill. But
Exactly.
you sit on this bench, and people walk past, and I almost feel myself wanting to go, we're just having a rest. We're not.
Just the kids drinking a
Yeah,
snack.
yeah.
Then we're going to hand sanitize and we'll be on our way.
Yeah. And I haven't seen so much of it recently, but in the first couple of weeks, I saw people on social media filming themselves ranting, saying stay at home and getting angry with everyone, and they were clearly out. And they were
Yeah,
like, I went out earlier and I was in the park and there were hundreds of people in the park. And I was like, and I think, yeah, but you were one of the 100 people.
yeah,
And they're like, I was only there because it was my 1 hour of exercise. And I think, well, that's probably the case for the other 100. Why are
yeah.
we?
And actually, sunbathing is really good for you. Like UV light does kill viruses, and
Yeah,
vitamin D is good for your immunity.
yeah. And that's
And
why it's so important, by the way. I think that people like yourself who live in a flat without a garden should be given the opportunity to go out, because
yeah,
we've spent the last 2 years in the build up to this saying mental health is just as important as physical health.
I was
Well,
just about to say that.
yeah.
That's
So,
what I was about to say. Like mental health is also health.
yeah, exactly.
And the best thing for our mental health is to give each other a bit of slack.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
and something that I've noticed, because in the evenings I sometimes deliver orders from our online shop.
Hmm.
So I deliver at around like Minch, Nailsworth, Horsley, lovely,
Yeah,
Chelford, Sheepscombe, lovely. And I was out last night and I noticed that there are loads of families going for evening walks.
yeah.
And I thought that is something really lovely.
I think it's amazing.
Yeah,
I've seen people going mad about that. I've seen people posting saying, "Oh, there's a lot more families out than there used to be." And I think, yeah, I think that's great, isn't it? It's brilliant. I think
I
it's
think that's
lovely.
amazing.
Yeah,
And if
yeah,
that carries on, that would be lovely.
yeah. And at the end of the day, the reason we're in lockdown is so that we can adhere to the 2 meter distance rule, right?
Yeah,
That's why we're in lockdown.
yeah,
And they enforced lockdown because so many of the things that we do in our lives would be impossible to keep that enforced. So
yeah,
we've locked down.
yeah,
So actually, as long as everybody, when they are out, is sticking to the 2 meter rule,
yeah,
then I think we should be a little bit easier on each other. And I think as a society and as a population, despite what the reflections that we see often on social media, I think we've done amazing, really, as a society.
yeah,
To deal with this in the way that we have. We've all, we've gone into lockdown. It looks like they're saying that we're at the peak now.
Right.
and that's so that it feels like this has all worked. But I think when you take the whole thing as a whole, I think we've done amazing as people,
Yeah.
really, to
Yeah.
adapt and do the way that we have. I think we're just not very good at outwardly expressing emotions in a healthy way. I think we can all, myself very much included, we can all be a little bit kind of dysfunctional in the way that we, let our feelings and emotions out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think another good thing that has come out of this is that we all actually are talking about how we feel more,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and maybe getting a bit more understanding about what that's about.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And the work that I do with the organisation, so I've been, I've moved it all online, so I'm delivering webcasts now. So much of that is just based around building on our ways of communicating our feelings and our emotions, and just how vital that is.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah. So there are good things coming out of it.
Like everything, of course, yeah. There's always reasons to be cheerful. There's always positives that can come out of difficult situations. But I do
Yeah,
think that's the way that it should be looked at. There will be positives to come out of this, but it is a difficult situation.
yeah.
Uh,
And if you don't learn Spanish, that's okay.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Do whatever you need to do in a pandemic to get through a pandemic. That's the
Yes,
reality. Whatever it is that you need to do to get by safely is what you
yeah,
should be doing. There's no
yeah,
right or wrong way of doing this at
yeah,
all.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So I might just mention that you helped with the Hollyoaks storyline recently.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, yeah. So I work with the whole Hollyoaks team really. I go to help on the workshops. So we have like scripting workshops where we go and we. Hollyoaks are brilliant, by the way.
Are they?
Yeah, their scripting team, their production team, their actors. That they really want to. They want to push the boundaries as much as they can for a 6:30 show.
Brilliant.
But they want to do it in a safe way. They want to be as real as they possibly can at that time, while making sure that they adhere to what they need to adhere to, and some of the conversations that they'll be creating as a result of their storylines within family homes is an amazing tool. And
Yeah.
I delivered a talk before the lockdown, and I met a lady who worked at an English speaking school in Paris, and she was saying that the children there use Hollyoaks clips from Hollyoaks to show their teachers some of the situations that they find themselves in. So that's brilliant.
Wow.
I'm doing some work with Ashley Taylor Dawson as well, who plays Darren, the main character who's going through the depression storyline at the moment. We're doing a little bit of a project at the moment where we're doing some kind of recorded conversations around the storyline and everything that brings up. So that's been really fun, and we did a podcast as well with the guys from Hollyoaks. So yeah, I'm very sort of privileged and grateful to be part of the Hollyoaks family.
Yeah,
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, no, it's very good.
Amazing. And you're interviewing Callum Best later.
Yeah, or if it's probably more him interviewing me. So
Okay.
he's got a series called Conscious Living.
Okay.
He's been running it on Instagram Live most nights. I think he done it last week. So he gets a load of guests. He gets one or two guests each evening. So he's had some really good guests on there. Some really good mindfulness guests. I think Eamon Holmes has been on there.
Amazing.
Yeah, so we did it last week. And it went down really, really well. So we're going again tonight. I'm back on tonight with Callum at 9 on Instagram.
On
Uh,
Instagram Live.
yeah, yeah.
Brilliant.
And we just basically do what we're doing now. Really, we just have
Yeah.
conversations about how we're dealing with things and how we're getting through it. So it's good.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah, it's enjoyable.
Yeah. Brilliant. Oh, well, thanks very much for your time, Josh. It's
Pleasure. It's been a good
always
conversation.
amazing
Yeah,
to
I really
listen to
enjoyed
you.
it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Have a great day with the family.
Yes, I will do. Enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
All right.
And good luck tonight on Instagram Live at 9.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
Take care
Bye,
then.
Josh.
Bye.
Bye.